What an arc this was. Magical Girl Racing Project Breakdown. This is a spin off from the main series and yet seems as important as the main series, I would say. It's not a spin off you can disregard in any sense of the word. Um, it's just like an alternate path, we'll say. From my understanding, this was a web series that was published over the series of a few years with a chapter a week by Asari Endo as they were writing the main series. It seemed to have finished its full run around the time that Black was released, and that's why we have it now. It seems that the order of each arc here it was a bit interrupted just because they decided to serialize the entire side series in the middle of what is the most likely or what is almost definitely the last arc or trilogy. And this was unexpectedly dense. Twice as long as, say, Restart or Limited. Each book has about, at least in my digital version, 450 or so pages, which is about double the usual volume length. So when I dipped my toes, I fell into the pool, if you understand what I mean with this, because it was a whole commitment and a half, but I don't fault it for that at all because it was an extremely entertaining side story, or I guess spin-off. In this case, it's not a side story, it's a spin-off. We have a mostly new cast here. Some housekeeping. I have used this boy as Tomaki next to Cherna Mouse since volume 4, the first episodes. I clearly have not, or was not aware that this was in fact Totomaga Oka. So, yeah, I'm actually going to be creating my own tier list because there's a lot of side characters that aren't on here and a lot of repeats that are just in the way. And you won't be able to see it in the recording directly, but there's a bunch of ads on the screen right now. I guess the website I was using decided to throw up ads everywhere, as unfortunately some websites do. So I'll actually be remaking this for the next video in a different, I don't know, format or a system, but the tier list order will remain the same. But yeah, we'll just get into it. We'll get into it because there's a lot to really delve into here. As you can see, we got the usual magical girls, but we've got mages. So we got Totomaka Oka, we've got Yol, Agriel Raimwade Corky, or Agri for short. I'm surprised I even pronounced or remembered that name. Naviru, Ragi's Way Nento, and John Shepherd's Pie. So I'm not sure if this is a controversial decision for the series or not, including non-magical girl characters. I mean, Mana was already a non-magical girl, but she's essentially a magical girl, right? But yeah, I actually enjoyed this because I love getting more perspectives on the world that is building around the series, the magical kingdom and the mages, the Osk faction, the lab, everything we learned about all the politics here and everyone's motivations was really really entertaining. And it's an interesting facet of this arc, right? I have a feeling it's so dense and long because it really spends time looking into every single person's viewpoint. Almost every single person. I think the only one here who does not have a viewpoint is Francesca for obvious reasons, Maya for obvious reasons, and then Yol. But Yol is kind of conjoined to Tota, so that makes more sense in my eyes at least. Um, but yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. The first one is Maya. She is quite a powerful magical girl. Her design is mostly hidden here, but it's filled with eyes, and she's somewhat obscured in like a traditional kimono. I think like a festival kimono, and she has a weird staff, and basically it's a magic staff that beats liars. Now, Maya isn't part of the Archfiend Cram School or the inspection department, but she does have a lot of history, I guess, with both Rarico and Miss Marguerite here. So she's used as an emotional anchor, mostly in a negative way for Rarico and Miss Marguerite. She is the one that dies first, which kind of gives everyone a sense of danger because he's quite about the most powerful one until we learn of Chelsea's full power. But basically, Maya was created to die in terms of the plot. Naviru, who is a pseudo antagonist, I suppose you could say, for this arc, basically wanted to get into the good graces of Yol, who is from a high noble family within, the magical kingdom and everything like that. Maya and Rarico protect Yol. He knows he can manipulate Rarico. Maya does not let him get close. If her magic staff is basically the 20-foot pole, get away from me and Yol type of thing, right? And for the role that she serves, I think she's pretty neat. I like her design a lot because it's very unique. She's probably Stella Lulu level. They interestingly enough, I've seen Stella Lulu less, but I kind of like him more. But but she does do more than Lady Proud for me, and Rappy Tape. Maybe I like her more than I thought. She's maybe maybe she's about Shuke Prain's level. Yeah, I think her design is really unique and pretty. It's busy, which I don't know how Maruino drew that, but I couldn't. Few people could, I think. But she was a good stepping stone for Rarico, especially, and Miss Marguerite, and any magical girl that wields like a staff like that and is bold in their design, I can appreciate. Rarico. So, her role in this story is to be a coward, right? She's a coward who thinks of herself. She's beyond dubious in her thoughts in prioritizing herself, where she would sacrifice 2 kids just to live. And in a desperate situation, right, like Breakdown, I can understand why Rarico does think the way that she does. Maya being very old-fashioned, as Rarico puts it, 2 or 3 generations behind. That's it's understandable on how her mindset was formed. She doesn't have a place in Yol's house without Maya, and so she needs to find her own ground to just to keep going, right? Her magic to fix things is pretty interesting, and I like how Maviru is using it to his advantage for his plans with the gear from the first mage and everything. She does die fighting Francisca, which is a lot of people in this arc. I knew, like, when you have a coward like that, you know they're not gonna run away, especially in this trapped rat scenario. I was just wondering when it was gonna happen, and when it happened, I was like, all right. And she died cursing everyone related to her, Yol, Tota, Maya especially, and her damn staff techniques, as she put it. So her value comes from her opinion with Maya. That doesn't mean I appreciate her opinion of Maya or the kids, right? She's, not to say she's bad, she's like Sister Nana, right? Where they are bad people in terms of what they think and their actions because of what they think. but narratively it makes a lot of sense, so I do respect them as characters. Maybe it's just shawls, you know? Maybe magical girls with shawls, you just know they have dubious thoughts. I gotta keep that in mind. Anyone who's from this series, keep that in mind. They'll do things for themselves even if they try and make it for someone else on the surface. Um, and just thinking about it, by the way, Maya, I kind of wish we saw more of her and Marguerite. It was all postpartum that we got whatever their relationship was. Especially considering Anne Marie, which was that one magical girl that Maya killed, that Marguerite trained in a duel and all that. So, but we'll get to that a little more when we get to Marguerite. Yol and Tota. So I'm doing these two together at once because, like I said, they're basically conjoined here at the hip. Um, I quite liked, surprisingly so, this duo. They're quite wholesome. They like magical battlers together, which is that card game within the Magical Girl Racing Project universe. They're both like 10 years old, so they're kids that get along well. Um, and Navi Rue is teasing them like, oh, they're holding hands and stuff, but um, I don't think it's to that point just yet. But I do enjoy their friendship, and I like how it continues after breakdown because in a situation like this, right? You can, however you want to put it, you can make a friend in a dire situation and it can break off just like that. But then there was those really close knit friends where you live through life and death together. That's what these two are going to be. Um, and while I don't think we'll ever see it from this series, unfortunately, I really would love to see a future where they're working together in some sort of fashion, in some sort of event past this arc. A good fair point in the future, 5, 10, 20 years, after they've grown up and learned a lot of stuff about the magical kingdom, and Yol with her family, and maybe Tota as just like a mage and a magical girl, and with Death Prayer, which is his aunt and everything. So Yol uses magical cards for her magic, which is pretty unique among the mages, and it does make her stand out. We never see her eyes in any of the art. I'm sure it's just that kind of like closed eye trope character, where she gets serious, she'll like open her eyes real thin and be menacing, maybe as she grows older. But her design is pretty cute. It's got like big poofy hair, and then Tota is just boy, which makes sense because Tota Magaoka, despite his very magical sounding name, he doesn't have any magic power at all. He's that rare offspring of a mage where he's just him. He's just a boy. And despite being just a boy, he was very key in defeating Francesca through Marguerite's dying guidance, and he's quite clever. Like, I did not expect from when I saw that we were getting Tota Magaoka, initial impressions were very different for me. He was a boy, and he was comparing Death Prayer's figure to Marguerite's figure, and a little crude, and eats food a whole bunch, and whatever, a boy, right, a young boy. But he's surprisingly very resolute in how he carries himself. He knows what his goals and his ideals are, and it's much different than the first impression you get from him when he first meets Marguerite. His last stand, like I mentioned, with Yo supporting him, Marguerite supporting him as he does do that whole thing with the butter knife sword for against Francisca, is great, and he does it while bleeding out of his eyes and blind. So he's got great resilience, and it's pretty funny that I've placed Tota Magaoka and Yol next to Princess Lightning here, because in their like little epilogue section, they basically agree to become artificial magical girls. I have zero idea if we're ever going to see Princess Toda and Princess Yol, but I would love to see it. I guess it would be an element, or maybe they'd be more like the Armored Arlie, Arc Arlie and Dory series here. Um, but who knows? I think it would be awesome if these two became a duo of artificial magical girls that was not in a dangerous situation, that just helped people and grew their magic power and skills and everything like that. So there's a lot of potential with these two. And while I do think it will generally go unfounded due to the nature of the series and just what's left, and here we go with another ad. Um, yeah, this is what I mean. I'll have to edit this out, I suppose, but or maybe just black out the screen. But you see where your Tota Annual is and all that. So, I guess I can just keep yapping, and we'll go on to Marguerite. Marguerite, Miss Marguerite. So she is part of the inspection department, right? She is the mentor to Mana. Mana, of course, has inherited Hana's role a little bit and has tried to grow as an inspector, and just how she handles suspicious people and dangerous situations. Marguerite was a teacher of battle from the inspection department. She is now retired, but is protecting Tota as a favor to Death Prayer, Tota's aunt, who's a magical girl who's friends with Miss Marguerite. Miss Marguerite is absolutely wonderful. She is awesome in every sense of the word. I think she's about Puck Puck level. Um, there's a lot of stress and despair that's accumulated within her, with Anne Marie, who is that magical girl she trained that got killed by Maya, with Maya, with Tota, with Death Prayer, with herself, with this how she views her whole situation. She is a very stressed individual, and yet despite all her stress, despite everything, she still remains highly intelligent, using her quite mundane ability to bend objects in a very fun and surprising way. And you just get this big mix of vulnerability, and yet she's frighteningly versatile at the same time. Right? So she's got to let go of the past a little bit, and again with Anne Marie and Maya and all that. But just her fighting with Francisca and her determination, which does falter for a little bit at some point, but just even as a human, when she's dying, she does not stand down until she breathes her last breath and gives everything. It's like she is a true tooth and nail fighter, and it's awesome. Her design is really pretty. We don't really see a magical girls in this series, at least, with this sort of hat and concealed face. Maybe what was it, Miss Rill, who is down here, almost reminds me of that, and Kafuria a little bit in terms of like obscured faces. And I guess Maya, which it's a good parallel if you actually look at their designs here and their positions. It's a pretty interesting parallel. But Miss Marguerite was wonderful, truly. And I really liked that we got a lot of her internal perspective on the past and the present. So it was really entertaining to see. Okay, so next we got the crazies. Love Me Ren Ren. So when I first started reading, Love Me Ren Ren reminded me of Noko. She's alone in her house as a young girl because her mother has left for a certain reason. For Love Me Ren Ren, it was she actually just left. And you really see that she has a very specific mindset about love and family, and she takes very specific work, and only takes that work if she believes that she can help the person that has hired her, right? And she does so for Agriel Rainwade Corky here, or just Agri, which I'm going to refer to her as Agri from now on, before I bite my tongue with her ridiculous name, right? But yes, Ren Ren was kind of that, like, oh, she's gonna be a very emotional, very in tune with other people, and she's not that. we quickly get more and more of her, and you see that she just has like intense attachment and probably abandonment issues. Um, it's heavily implied that she may or may not have killed her mother, and that when her mother and her father were in an argument, her little sister was killed as she was like pushed away by one of the parents, and a whole dysfunctional family. And she's basically mentally blocked it with what I assume to be her job and her magic and all of that. Her magic, which is to, use her arrows to make people fall in love, is also a great source of conflict in this book for a fair part. So she uses it on Pastel Mary, and Pastel Mary uh, gathers all the grapefruit for Team Agri here, right? And that means all the grapefruit, not just the surrounding ones. She steals them all for Ren Ren. So that starts the whole seed of distrust and contracts and who's with who and everything. In this arc, what starts the breakdown is the loss of magic, right? What starts everything going bad is the loss of magic. It turns out that the island is rooted all in one system for one tree, right? And this tree and all the other trees connected through its root system produce grapefruit. It's a specialized type of grapefruit, which was already a magical fruit. But essentially, this grapefruit restores magic power, but it's the trees of the grapefruit that are sucking up the magic from everything to produce the grapefruit, which gives magic power. So it's this cycle of constantly replenishing, and the more and more and more and more all these mages and magical girls are eating grapefruit, the faster their magic runs out, because the island is still taking it in and everyone is still eating, and the island cannot produce faster than the girls are eating. So you can see how it quickly goes to shit, right? So Agri has Ren Ren use her magic. Ren Ren misuses her magic. Pastel Mary takes everything. And then Ren Ren has to use her magic against Dreamy Chelsea. So Chelsea loves Mary, who loves Ren Ren, who loves Agri. Yeah, crazy, right? Basically, Ren Ren uses her magic for those two and just kind of pushes them away and manages them. But she's really focused on Agri and making her happy. And the more we see, of Ren Ren's perspective and Nephilia's view on Ren Ren, we do see that she's truly broken. She's hallucinating, maybe a little bit psychopathic. She craves love in a deeply unhealthy way. So much so that in her final fight, she views all these magical girls as completely different people. And she's saying, oh, I didn't kill my mother, to herself. And she sacrifices herself for Clantail, who basically took the place of either her mother or her father, which in turn was basically like her sister. What her sister had done years ago, and she's like reenacting it, and it's just crazy. Ren Renjane, at least, she's probably this is hard. Yeah, she's probably right under Adelheid. She was all over the place in a good way. And I mean, her design is neat, the mix between the angel and the devil, which kind of suits both her personality and her magic. But just crazy. It was all I can really say. Love me, Ren Ren. Yeah, crazy. Nephilia. Now, interestingly enough, I had Nephilia pegged as the more crazy one from the start, but she seemed more grounded, and now she's back to being more crazy again. Nephilia's gimmick, I guess you could say, is that she loves nasty people, but it has to be a certain type of nasty, right? It can't be Francisco nasty, and it can't be like I don't know, Calamity Mary nasty or Keek nasty. Nephilia likes somewhat shameless people, and Agri and initially Ren suited that, right? So she was fine doing nasty things. It's just how she is. She's interesting in her magical girl form because this is a disparity between her thoughts and her actions a little bit. She thinks so fast that her mouth can't keep up in magical girl form, so she ends up muttering and stuttering and breaking off her words and sentences. So only a few people can fully understand her, and she just laughs it off. Which, speaking of her laugh, she uses it as a laugh, of course, but it also seems to be a defense mechanism. She'll laugh to herself when she's broken, like her wrists are shattered and her body is creaking after fighting with Francisca briefly. She'll laugh to herself when she's making a shady deal with Clantail or Agri and Ren and their interactions. The kiss, 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 the the tss, however that laugh is her trademark, and it's entertaining somehow to me. I don't know. She was entertaining. Her magic to replay what people say, upon their death or near their death or just after their death in general. Basically, if she touches a dead body, she can replay what the person has said from her mouth. And it's used in multiple clever ways, surprisingly enough, in this arc. I think Nephilia was really, really interesting, though. She is honestly, yeah, she might be there, I would say. I'm surprised at how much she ended up. Honestly, I'm surprised she survived, but I'm not complaining that she did. At the end of the arc, she has Ren's feather, and Ren's feather is a part of her, and she rubs the feather with her fingers, and she somehow expertly enough is using Ren's feather to cope, because she's playing Ren's voice out of her own mouth and having her own pre-constructed conversations with Ren in her own body, if that makes sense. So she'll rub her feather, Ren will say, "Oh, Neffy, you shouldn't do this," and Neffy will go, her laugh, and respond in her usual mutters, and they'll just have a conversation like that with herself, which is interesting. Another facet of her, law and contracts. She's a magical girl, legal representative. She does a lot of laws and inheritances, and that's why Agri brought her for the whole plot of Breakdown. Inheritances and just death and all those contracts. She was involved in the aftermath of the Keek incident, which was Restart, and because of that she speaks to Clantail about it twice. Now I want to get to Clantail, and I'll have to move Ragi up just a bit to talk about Clantail. You can tell she's really been affected by Restart. She absolutely, no matter who they are, does not want anyone to die. Even if she doesn't like them. Even if she has to sacrifice everything for them. She sacrifices all of her grapefruit to help Miss Marguerite when she is stuck in the bog. She'll sacrifice her well-being to look for Ragi, even though she knows the truth about what Ragi has done. She'll sacrifice her safety to save the two kids, even though they have nothing to do with her. Clantail deserves a boost, I will say. She does go above Swim, and she is an SS. In this arc, we see more of her internal perspective and how she dealt with the aftermath of Restart. She's really burdened by people sacrificing themselves for her, because when she felt the cold body of Petchka drift away from her, that stuck with her. And the unfortunate thing is that it happened again with Ren. So she had to relive the same experience, and I'm sure she's not doing well. She's in fact not doing well, because once she learns that Ragi stopped Snow White from getting info that could have stopped Keek earlier, she gets angry at Ragi, and she doesn't stay in the epilogue on the island, and she leaves, and that's the last we hear of her for now. So there's a lot of turmoil in her heart. She went through a lot. We see more of her human form. In fact, we see all of the magical girl's human forms here, just due to the nature of the plot. And you can clearly see, just even in human form, she's so prepared for anything because of what she went through in Restart. It kind of hurts. Human form, no problem. She can, even blind without her glasses, she can traverse rough terrain, and she has rations on hand, and just crazy. We see a little bit more of her animal transformations too, like a moth and a spider monkey, I believe. And there's another new one that I do remember seeing, but it's evading me. Point is, Clantail's been studying up on zoology to improve herself, and just to make sure that her dream, her wish in any bad situation that she might be, her dream can be fulfilled, is that no one dies for her. Unfortunately, she did not succeed, but I'm just glad that she's safe, and that hopefully she can truly take time to recover and just think about how she can move onward, whether it's through reconciling with Ragi or not. I hope it's with through Ragi. I would like their relationship to heal a bit, because it was, an appreciation both ways in that relationship. But I guess we will be sure to see what happens. And while we're here, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the returning girls, which is basically Team Mana. So Mana is here. She's an inspector. She's one of the prospective heirs to Sataborn's legacy, and she chooses, of course, Nanako-san and Mei as the magical girls to accompany her. We see less of her in this arc than I expected, but what she does do here, especially towards the end, is really admirable. We can see her grow through Marguerite's death. Now she has Hana's, metaphorically. She has Hana's hand on her right shoulder, Marguerite's hand on her left shoulder, as she moves forward and continues to improve her inspection department work. We also know that at the end of Breakdown, she goes to certain ruins, and basically that's where she meets Uluru and all that. So we know Breakdown takes place possibly at the same time as Aces and before Queens, because it was just a few days that it did take place. So maybe more like Jokers and Aces at the same time. Hard to tell. But Mana's also getting a bump up to S, right next to Marguerite. Actually, do I like Puck Puck more than Mana? Right now, the inspection buddies will stay close together. We'll see if White and possibly Red bump Mana up just a little more, I think. But yeah, Mana was great. In the short time that we did see her in, the small perspectives, we see her thinking things through. We see her being suspicious. We see her taking action. And it's just great to see more Mana. She's really, truly grown on me since Limited. And for an author to make me like a character a whole bunch more like that, I always love when that happens, and I'm not complaining at all. Mei is Mei. Tepseka Mei is Tepseka Mei. We see a little bit more of her emotional side. She has emotionally developed a little bit more, and I do like seeing that. Even in her tortoise form, when her and Kotori, which is Nanako-san, her and Kotori are stuck in the bog and running around and finally escape and are worried about everything, we see that she hides in her shell, and she firmly keeps grasping on to Kotori as a way to stay by her. Even with her blank expression, Mei has her own system and her own values and her own way of learning, and I'm proud of her for advancing just a tiny bit. And it's great to see more emotional intelligence from her, and I was just glad that we got to see more of her. She did quote unquote die a few times from Francisca, though, her clones. So she was changing sizes all over the place, and she nearly died. If it wasn't for those pills that Francisca dropped, she probably would have been dead. So I'm just happy that the Team Mana is still all alive. Kind of. Nautical-san. I don't think I could have ever been in my bingo card for Nautical-san to become a tree. But she did, in fact, become a tree. Yeah. So the climax here of Breakdown is Francisca. They're all fighting Francisca, and stuff happens. Ragi creates a disc of magic, and I won't go into all the details. If you've read Breakdown, you understand what I'm talking about. But Ragi, he has that disc of accumulated energy from the island and all that. Francisca, the empty vessel, the base incarnation, right, or rather the incarnation base. You have her, you have Pastel Mary, and you have Nautical-san. They all tumble into this void of accumulated energy. Ragi, his throat being bleeding out, does not have the vocal power to save them immediately. Not that he would save Francisca, just the other two, right? Mana and Naviru do come running up and heal Ragi, and then they can get them out. Except Nautical-san is MIA for a good while. It turns out that she became that very central tree that I mentioned earlier in the island that produces grapefruit and connects to all the roots, because Ragi, for his ritual, needed those roots to be connected to his power, his magical power. And Nautical-san was the one who helped them connect those roots, and that's why she became a tree. So, right now she's tree maxing. She is on a hill. Yeah, she is a tree. She is producing grapefruit. She's like a dryad. Her body is embedded into the tree, like in the middle of the tree, and she's just stuck there as the tree. So it's this weird fusion of Nautical-san and dryad and tree. And she couldn't speak for a while. All she could do was perceive things and hear things and produce fruit. But once May being the goat sniffing her out, she did go ahead and get saved by the people on the island. So they're trying to remove her from the tree, but the last perspective we see is Nautical-san, and Snow White and Uluru are visiting her. So this is clearly after Queens, and they need something from Nautical-san. I have no idea if Tree Nautico can use her goggles or ability in any way, shape, or form, but who knows? Maybe Uluru's ability can be like, Nautical-san, you are not the tree, and then she's not the tree anymore. That would be pretty interesting, actually. Maybe that does happen, who knows. But not only is Nautical-san being a tree extremely unexpected, but it is incredibly funny. If I had any artistic ability, or maybe I will, even though I don't have artistic ability, I will draw her like as if she were in a stage play wearing a tree costume and then laugh. Anyway, Nautical-san, more seriously, we see a lot more of... We already had a hint of it, to be fair, but we see just a little bit more on what she felt like after Limited. And for her, we know that staying in her magical girl form keeps her mentally stable. She's basically almost always in her magical girl form, and so she's the only one in PJs, in pajamas, when everyone detransforms, and she gets embarrassed and stuff. But she's a little better with her goggles, a little more forthright and willing to do stuff even in her human form, just because of her experience in Limited and what Archfiend Pam and Mana told her regarding staying transformed and just being resilient. So I enjoyed her for sure. She's gonna go under ruler, but above Fall, I would say. Now the entirety of Team Mana is in S, so think about that how you will, but I greatly enjoy all of them. It's really interesting how Limited became wow, I cannot speak, but Limited, it had a comeback with its survivors, I would say. Not that the survivors were bad in my eyes, far from it. I just didn't think we were going to get more of them in this way, and I'm glad that we did. Backtracking to Clantail, Aragi. Now, don't don't slander me for this, but I really liked Ragi. Yes. So you wouldn't expect the perspective of an old man to be entertaining. He's angry all the time. He's very strict and stubborn in his ways. He's an old man, right? But because he is an old man, he has the context of a lot of what goes on in the magical kingdom, and just overall the research revolving or involving the island, right? Not Navi, oh my goodness, Ragi's Wainento, the old man, we have seen him before, twice before. He was the man who stopped Snow White from getting Keeks records, and that's why Clantail and him now have that unfortunate tension between them. And funnily enough, he was that same old man Top Pop bonded with, and he was searching for Top Pop and didn't use her because she died in Limited. So if Top Pop survived, she may well would have been in this arc. And I think that would have been pretty interesting. Clantail and Top Pop, protecting Raki here. But I do want to say that having the older perspective is really interesting. So, to give more background about the details of this arc, all the mages are somehow potential heirs to a deceased mage. The deceased mage goes by Lear Kuem Sataborn. Sataborn is basically how he's referred to. He was on that island doing research and died in an accident. His will was sent out to the people, or rather the mages. The mages were said to bring up to 2 magical girls, right? We later learn why the will was so eccentric and weird, but point is, we see Navi's thought process thinking through why each heir was there, why he was there, why magical girls were needed, the secrets of Francisca, the rituals on how to, save everyone from the island. He almost dies like 3 times, but he's a tough old boot, and I'm really happy he survived because I want more from him. And maybe that's a little greedy because we actually got a lot of him, but I want more from him because I want him to resolve his feud with Clantail. You see Ragi, right, and you see him getting mad of magical girls and mad that he was thrown into this backwater department managing the magical girls that he doesn't like because of the Ox faction and all that. But he has a really clear-cut set of morals. He does not like to do anything illegal at all. He hasn't ever done anything illegal. He believes rules are there for a reason. That's why he stops Snow White. Because she was going through illegal means, and that's what Snow White does as the magical girl hunter. She's, a vigilante in what she does. Ragi just can't, as a stubborn old man, he can't do that, and so he sticks to the law. We see that challenge at the very end with Nephilia as she agrees to trick Navi with Nephilia to bind Navi into a contract. So now Navi-Ru is in love with Nephilia, and we'll see where that goes, but I'll get to that when we get to Navi-Ru. Point is, Ragi is very set in his ways, and we see him opening up a little more in his opinions of magical girls and Clantail and everything, and he's still angry, he's still stubborn, he still yells at peeps. We see him reflecting, though, at the end, about his feud with Clantail, about his decision to do something illegal, to do the right thing, and just the implications of that. So he's actually kind of somber and depressed a little bit at the end, and I kind of feel bad for him because he's stubborn, he's old, and everything. But I think personally, the impression I got from him is that he genuinely believes in what magical girls are. Not magical girls, but just the magical kingdom. What mages and magical girls can be. And the fact that rules are there for a reason. It was because he followed rules and wasn't willing to break them. It was because of that he is now in his current position as the magical girl department head or whatever, right? So I feel his struggle, that crossroads of doing what is said to be right and doing what will eventually become the right thing. Clantel pierces his heart with that more lives could have been saved thing, right? Yeah, I don't know. Ragi was the surprise victor here, surprise survivor even, and I really did enjoy it. So I hope with Nanako-san, with Pastel Mary, with May, with Mana, and hopefully with Clantel, he can really soften up, learn to convey himself in a less stubborn and angry way, and even though he did make that drastic choice of doing something illegal to do the right thing, I hope he can grow from that and just find what he believes to be right and true and steady. And I just hope we see him again. And if not, then I at least hope that the end of his life, which he does seem to be reaching, is peaceful enough to where he won't have to get into another breakdown situation, right? Okay, Agriel Ray Wade Quirky. Agri. She's alright. I did enjoy her for what she was, for sure. She's probably... This is what, Sally Raven, Shuke Prince. She's a little bit above Mana and Shuke and Sally. Maybe she's about there. She's a very simple character, right? She was the daughter of a mistress of Sadaborn. And she wants money because she's looked down upon. And she tries to be sneaky and slick. And then she gets sliced in half, and I believe is the third or fourth to die. She's a little impulsive, and I think that might have been her downfall. Also, just a matter of circumstance. I mean, she was never going to stand up against Francisca. She didn't really use magic herself anyway, so I don't have much to say about Agri, but she was entertaining enough for what she did. She basically bolstered Ren and Ophelia and their development, so for that I can appreciate her. But you do kind of wish, like Ren, that she was able to kind of grasp at that better life. But, unfortunately that doesn't always happen. Alright, Clarissa Toothedge. A very cute design. One of my favorite, more animalistic ones, I would say. She's a very fun design that mix between like poofy and stylish with athleticism is really cool. I would say she's for sure an A. Yeah. Right under La Pucelle, we'll say. She is the niece of Naviru, so she's also an antagonistic force a little bit. But not truly. So I'm going to have to kind of talk about Naviru and Clarissa in a bulk here. They're working together and do what they do because Naviru's sister and therefore Clarissa's mother is going to be used as an ingredient for an incarnation based for the Osk faction, and the lab is doing that. Obviously, the relatives of said person do not want her to become an ingredient. So, they go ahead and do what they do and cause the things that they cause in an effort to move upward within the system of power, to stop that. Because there's kind of no other way you can do so, right? Clarissa herself is a very fun character. She's really casual. She's a great fighter, though. And her ability, she bites something, she knows its location at any time. You think that could be used in a very simple way. And it is. She bites the clothes of people, she knows where they are. She bites the branch of a tree, she knows where it is, and if it falls down from Francisca or anything. But then she takes it to the next level. She bites everything. All the trees. Every single tree on the island. She takes wood chips, keeps them in her mouth, chewing on them, spitting them out, and then she knows the positions of the wood chips and can basically fight in her own predetermined environment because she knows where the trees are, she knows where the wood chips are, and she knows where everyone is because she has bitten their clothing. Now that is crazy. I say it time and time again. This series uses simple abilities and pumps them up to the max, and it's so cool every single time. So we see a lot of fun stuff from her. We also see that she is very easily stressed, considering that she is perhaps the youngest character, I believe. Yeah, she is as young as Tota and Yol. So around like 9, 10, 11 years old. She's very intelligent for her age, but she is also very stressed. And we can see it in her flattening ears and her kind of manner of speech breaking up just a little bit, and the fact that she is the sole magical girl that Naviru is using as his accomplice, so she has to do a lot. Her confidence, I have derived, her confidence comes from being absolutely sure of where everything is and what something will entail. She knows exactly what Francisca will do and how she acts and how to stop her and what can harm her. She knows where everyone is on the island. She knows the locations of basically everything that she bites, right? Her magic has forced her into a mindset where she is prepared for everything and therefore cannot prepare herself for when something changes. And unfortunately, the thing that changed was quite fatal, and that thing was Francisca. Francisca had fought against Chelsea and against Marguerite and all the strong people, and was unable to use her axes. So she used Maya's staff. Now, Maya's staff is very powerful, and it is meant to destroy liars. That doesn't quite bode well for Clarissa or Naviru, who have been lying out of their teeth this entire arc. In what I believe is most probably the most brutal death in the series, maybe? One of the second to Pukin, perhaps. She's obliterated by a staff-wielding Francesca, and it is rough, Chief. Like, seeing that happen to her just made me go, oh no. And yeah, just Ren seeing Clarissa like that, Clientele seeing Clarissa like that, you just feel bad, man. I mean, she was intelligent and young, and it's just like, man, she was a little bit dragged into this by her uncle, but you could tell she was desperate to find her mother. And Ren connected with that too, and that's what made Ren go crazy at the end as well, that final push. But yeah, I think it's really cool how her ability was used. She was creative in her ability, and yet that creativity limited her own creativity when it came to being unprepared for something. So it was a double-edged sword, and she got the double-edged staff and died quite brutally, unfortunately. But I did really enjoy her for what she was. So was glad to have her, and really cute design. Love the design a whole bunch. Might be one of my favorite designs from the New Girls. It'd be tied with Chelsea for my favorite from the New Girls. But Naviru, All right. Naviru is a real piece of shit, but in a completely understandable way. And so I am completely torn on where to put him, but I think I'll put him right under Clarissa. So he's purposely he was someone who worked for Sodomorn. He came on and off the island where this takes place, and he is the instigator essentially for a majority of the plot. Right? He is that antagonist figure, while Francisca is more like just the force of nature that all the magical girls need to fight. Naviru purposely activated Francisca. Naviru purposely manipulated the will to bait the mages and their magical girls to the island because he had a few goals. He wanted to kill Maya specifically, and he did. He wanted to get into Yo's good graces, which is undetermined if he did or not. He wanted Rarico alive. He wanted to get the gear. Those things did fail. He does a lot of dubious things, and for a majority of the book, you realize, okay, he's that greasy uncle stroking his beard, and he's essentially doing bad so he can get good for himself. But it's with a very understandable goal, and I've mentioned it already, his sister. But now he has to deal with the death of his niece in pursuit of his sister, right? Which is an incredibly tough situation to be in. And as we get along and break down, and everything breaks down with Ren Ren starting a fire in her craziness, and the grapefruit diminishing, and all the magical power getting sucked away even faster, and Francisca doing Francisca stuff, and everything, right? You see, he tries to hide it, but Mana can see through it. We really do see Naviru become more desperate and worried. Very subtly. He plucks the hairs on his chin. He wipes the sweat off his greasy neck and head. He worries about Clarissa. Maybe not in the way he should worry about her, but he does. So, there's more layers to him than just the mask that he puts on. And for what he was trying to accomplish, although a lot of it was in direct involvement and a lot of it did go wrong, the goal is so understandable that I can respect what the character is. Now I wonder how his character is going to progress, because at the end, I did mention this before, Nephilia and Ragi trick Naviru. It turns out Nephilia still has some of Love Me Renren's arrows. They tricked him into drinking a teacup that had the arrow attached to it, or like the arrowhead in it. That means it pricked him. Naviru is now in love with Nephilia. The assumption is that they bound him by contract, or by love, or by both, to go ahead and basically spill all his secrets. Whether that will turn out good or bad for him is something to be seen. Maybe Breakdown's characters will converge into Red, or maybe side stories. It's really hard to tell where the Breakdown plot lines are going to go from here. But in terms of Naviru and what he did, as a member of the lab. Okay, so I temporarily died off camera. Maybe I need some grapefruit or something. I choked my lungs out. But point is, Naviru, we know that he's part of the lab and everything like that. And the Osk faction, I just want to see more with him, and I hope we do get more of him. And for now, that's all I can really say about Naviru. He's about Clarissa level. They have that level of intrigue as for what they did and what Naviru will do, even if he is brainwashed. So, we'll see where that goes. John Shepherd's Pie, he's alright. Actually, he's probably right above Agri. Maybe that's a bit weird of a decision, but he's alright. He's a B. He is Soderborn's nephew. He likes cooking. He named himself Shepherd's Pie, his last name, because he really likes shepherd's pie. You have him hiring Pastel Mary and Dreamy Chelsea, two very incompetent but also very competent magical girls in completely different ways. Um, he is a victim of the situation and dies pretty early on, but his perspective was entertaining for what it was. It didn't add too much, you know. It wasn't, all the secrets revealed or anything, but he was his own character. And he did like to cook, and he was stressed, and he was just trying to manage things as he could. And if he made that shepherd's pie and he made that soup and it was tasty, clearly it left an impression on these two last girls here, because they do remember him and fell for him. So, and Ragi, he also did not want to see shepherd's pie die. But let's get to the absolute unit that is Francesca. So, it becomes very clear as the story goes on that this is a husk, a vessel. She is an incarnation base. So, essentially, she is a Grimheart, and she is a Puck without a magical girl inside. She is just on autopilot. And that autopilot is very, very dangerous. Before I continue, I do want to point out her name is very clever and funny, I guess. Francesca. So it's just the I becoming an E. And yet it's both of the ways that you can pronounce her weapon. She wields two axes because she has the goddess of the spring motif. That's the old fable where a woodsman drops his axe into a lake or a river or something. I guess it would be a spring. And the goddess rises up. Did you drop the gold axe or the silver axe? The woodsman decides, or rather, honestly responds that it would neither are his, and so he gets both. I believe that's how it goes. She has a gold axe and a silver axe, except they are very deadly. She is very dangerous, and her axes can turn into anything she wants. Yes, very, very dangerous indeed. So, for what she is only, and what her abilities are only, she is kind of crazy, and is probably above Stanska, I would say. We see her axes bend, we see her axes turn fluffy, sharp, combustible material. Even her super move is transforming her axe material into Archfiend Pam's wings, which, yeah, that's mighty scary. She's some sort of ultra developed homunculus because she is that incarnation base. There are 9 other Francisca bodies that were sacrificed in Ragi's ritual to go ahead and suck the energy out. So it is just her one body that is still there, and we'll get to what I mean by that, but you know what I mean if you read Breakdown. But she doesn't have a lot of lines, but I do think it's very interesting what her origin is, how she adapts based on who she fights. She's a very see something, you learn something, you mimic something type of vessel. And just, I don't think there's ever been such a pressuring, how do I say, presence in this series. Puck, is different in the fact that the world's at stake, so it's this grand, total, this her vibe and her scope is just huge. Pukim has that intense bloodthirst. Cranberry also has bloodthirst, but is more slick, where Pukin is more torturous. Francisca, to me, is the embodiment of dread. You hear her axe, or you hear her say, "Did you drop the gold axe or the silver axe?" Or if you hear her singing Dreamy Chelsea's theme song or humming or whatever, you feel Francisca's presence. You just know that things are going to go bad. Pukin at least has some tact in her verbal speech. Francisca is a machine, a natural force. This is a man versus machine, man versus nature conflict, basically. However you want to put it. And she's so menacing in that role that it was actually quite entertaining. We never get her perspective because she doesn't have one. She has no soul. But crazy. Speaking of crazy, Pastel Mary. So this is gonna be Pastel Mary. Okay. So where am I putting Pastel Mary? I think I want above Ren Ren, Adelheid, top above Teddy. Maybe here. Now, in essence, she really didn't do as much, right? However, there's this very low burning, simmering conviction within Pastel Mary, and considering how she ended up too, there's a lot of aspects of her that I really enjoy. First of all, clumsy girls are cute. What can I say? Clumsy girls are cute. She draws sheep everywhere. She trips over her sheep. Her sheep trip over her. She's not reliable, and yet she still makes an effort to be helpful, especially to Raggi and Shepherd's Pie and Chelsea, right? She is an art student, so she makes a living or attempts to make a living by being a freelancer magical girl with her art. We do learn through the bonus content that she is attempting to make an entire career about from drawing sheep, even not in magical girl form, and it's not going well. She's a little like sassy and pragmatic a little bit, and yet entirely nervous and clumsy and stumbling all over herself. But we see that conviction, that low burning conviction, burn more and more and more and more and more. And it climaxes when she is thrown into the disc with Francisca. So Pastel Mary is lost. As in, her body is gone. The life she knew was gone. Because she is now Francisca Francesca. You have the consciousness of Pastel Mary within Francisca's body. So the vessel now has a host. So you have Pastel Mary in Francisca's body, but she's still the same. She stumbles all over the place, and now she can barely draw sheep or use the axes, so she got the worst of both worlds. And randomly she will say, "Did you drop the gold axe or the silver axe?" Against her own will. I think, as a character, Pastel Mary is a very good sidekick, and that's perhaps rude to her, but to Chelsea and to Raggi, her support as an extra character for them to interact with was very entertaining. And when we did get her perspective, although it was very interspersed, it was filled with a lot of her being confused. And you do need those characters that are confused and don't know what's going on and need to rely on other people for a situation like this to be believable and more grounded, right? And I say grounded as it's filled with magical girls and here and there, but that's not the point. The point is that I think Pastel Mary, even as a nervous magical girl who can't quite do much, she stands out on her own, and she does commit to what she can do. And now she has the intrigue of being the new Francisca as well. Whether they decide to separate the mind from the body, or whether she fully integrates into Francisca, I do hope we see more of what is next to her, in the same sense of like with Nanako-san, right? But yeah, it's hard to put into words, uh, but maybe I'm just stumbling over all over the words, just like Pastel Memory Mary stumbles over everything. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed Pastel Mary a fair bit, so I am glad that she did survive and that she was able to support the people, and that she is aiming to support Chelsea specifically even more. Say what you want about Renven and her arrows forcing people to love, but I do think there's actual chemistry between Mary and Chelsea, and who knows? Who knows? Anyway, speaking of Chelsea, I where do I begin with Dreamy Chelsea? Here's where I begin with Dreamy Chelsea. I'll begin with placing her, and in what is a landslide victory, she's here, without a doubt. Yes, she is second place. Piffle's forever the queen, but Chelsea is the dream. Okay, that was kind of corny. Anyway, point is, Dreamy Chelsea is freaking awesome, dude. Everything about her. She has that middle-aged magical girl that Magical Daisy had without getting the anime. She is stuck in the past as a 5-year-old, like that 5-year-old mentality of, I'm going to get an anime. I'm a pure and righteous magical girl who does poses and looks cute and will save everyone. And when we first see Chelsea, when we first read about Chelsea, we're like her mother and we think she's delusional. And she still is, a fair bit, I would say. She learns a lot of things the hard way. And yet, she is so powerful and so skilled beyond the delusion and the mindset that she has that you are forced to respect her. She proves herself. She's the first to injure Francisca. If Francisca did not stop her own bleeding, by the way, the second time she would have died against Chelsea. Chelsea is, if it wasn't for Francisca, Chelsea is the most powerful magical girl on the island by a huge margin. Her ability to control stars is more violent than you would expect. So much so that Navi Rue believes that Chelsea is a violence specialist when Chelsea doesn't like violence. Chelsea trained up. She's 34 years old, by the way. So since like 5 years old, for 30 years basically, she has trained up to be her own ideal magical girl. She has made her own magical girl dance. She poses mid-fight while exuding off an intense aura that says that she can't be beaten. She is extremely acrobatic, and what she considers to be a game is actually perhaps the most intense training. Miss Marguerite, who is a master of fighting styles and analyzing them, is terrified by Chelsea and says that she wouldn't be able to kill Chelsea, only maybe, or rather defeat Chelsea, only maybe if she was allowed to kill Chelsea. So, like, Chelsea is just the GOAT. And we go pretty in depth, in full detail, on not only her multiple fight scenes in this arc, but her mindset, how her mindset is questioned, how she needs to act when she's confronted with her own hypocrisy. Rocky brings it up to her face. And how through everything and anything, she still stands up. And she still sings her song and does her heart sign and peace sign. And still survives and wins like the fucking goat she is. Because, let me tell you, if you remember my Joker's video, you'll understand that when Princess Inferno was fighting against the Joker Shufflin', I got hype. Okay? That hype, which was perhaps the peak of what I thought I could reach in terms of a battle hype for the series, is squandered completely by Chelsea. And I'm bewildered that such a happening occurred. But it's crazy. Chelsea's so precise that she crushes rocks and boulders into star shapes so she can use her magic and fly around and do her things with her stars, whether it's projectiles or using them as mirrors or using them as a platform to do acrobatics and fly on. She's childish and yet strangely she's mature, which maybe it's that dual mindset of being a 34-year-old who has young dreams still. Maybe Chelsea is just that perfect blend of, the series says it multiple times, magical girls will go to the farthest extents for the strangest ideals, and dreamy Chelsea is the epitome of that. Chie Umeno, I've memorized her human name too, Chie Umeno, which is Chie, Chie Chelsea kind of, and then Umeno I think has the character for dream in it. Dreamy Chelsea, there you go. She has the ability to manipulate stars, whatever stars that may be, whether it's the boulders or the mirror stars or whatever, and it suits her because she is the star of this arc for me so much. And the very best moment to me where I nearly jumped out of my relaxed position, I even clapped in applause inadvertently once or twice, one or two claps. Chelsea was dead. Nephilia's magic work, she was by far and gone dead. She had probably just died when Nephilia got to her. It was this after the second time she fought Francisca. Chelsea, right, was singing her own theme song as she was passing away. Nephilia repeats it through her magic, and Chelsea revives herself because she heard someone calling for her help, because in her theme song that she made herself, she says, "Save me, Chelsea." Now, if that is not the most idealistic magical girl thing out of this world, beyond the realm of normalcy someone could get in this series, I don't know what is. And still, Chelsea did it with no qualms, with not even a realization that perhaps she had made that happen. It didn't matter. Dreamy Chelsea, she continues the dream that she has put upon herself. She carries the dreams of the magical girls that she idolizes from the anime that she's watched. And I just want to make a quick note about her theme song. It's titled Fancy and Brave. That is the title, Fancy and Brave. That does describe Chelsea. But more than that, and I'll be doing a video about this, and I think I mentioned it a video or two ago. There's a Musica Magica, basically a CD where the anime voice actors sing in character. I sincerely doubt we'll ever get a breakdown anime. It took, 9 years for Restart to start production after the first season. But if ever there is a CD that has Chelsea and the breakdown characters, Fancy and Brave needs to be on there. Please. That is the perfect way to tie into the main light novels. So if there's a future 35 years from now when that happens, and I'm a part of that future, I'm playing that on blast and on repeat. But to just top off everything about Chelsea, she survives. Her own magical girl song revived her because she heard someone calling for her help. She survives death again because the mere thought, the mere voice of Clantail pictured in her mind as a cute deer, and she followed the deer instead of crossing the river of death mentally. Chelsea is cute, and it is because she is cute and is so focused on the cute that she is crushingly and just amazingly a dangerous and complicated and layered individual, and I love it. I was just kind of blown away. Clearly, it's been a while since there's been an immediate SS tier since Volume 3, and Chelsea blew the competition out of the water, and I love her for it. I hope her and Mary deepen their friendship. Maybe if it's something more, I hope for that. And at the very end of Chelsea's section, it's not the end of the book because that's Nanako-san, but the last we see of Chelsea, she's a bum. She's a 34-year-old neat stay-at-home bum, jobless. That's why she got hired by Shepherd's Pie. But she's growing now, and even in her human form, she realizes the things that she needs to do in her human form and the things she needs to do in her magical girl form, and she's taking steps forward to continue what she wants and needs to do. And she decides, in honor of shepherd's pie, she will cook a shepherd's pie. And that's just a nice little quirk, nice little way to close out everything that she went through and experienced. I hope she cooks that, and I hope that she is with Mary at some point, even though Mary is Francisca. I hope that they can deepen their friendship and bond. I hope that they also do that with Ragi, because they were kind of the power trio. Chelsea, Mary, and Ragi were kind of a power trio in this book. They were probably my favorites group to follow, even though they weren't originally part of the same group. Ragi kind of took the place of Shepherd's Pie in that sense. But yes, overall, Breakdown was incredibly dense, incredibly surprising in how it affected me, incredibly interesting in what it brought to the table based on its status as a spin-off, taking it away from the main story and yet linking it back eventually. And I think there's a lot of loose ends here that could really develop into something cool. Now, we have very limited time, right? To limited time, I just think of limited, but we have very limited books to flesh out these characters. It's very possible we will see none of these people new to this book ever again. And if that is the case, then so be it. I do think it's a satisfying enough ending for enough of the characters, and it was in fact a web series anyway. That would just happen to get serialized in the middle of the final arc. But Breakdown was a long journey. It was a dreadful journey, and yet it was a very touching and experimental take on what this series could be, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it might be in the top 3 for me with Queens and Restart. And overall, what to say, right? Just if Francisco's gonna ask me silver or gold or silver axe, I think I'd have to choose both because I'll get killed by them anyway. And in that morbid send-off, let's hope I don't break down when I read the following books. Knowing how this series is, there's a good chance though, so might want to wish me luck on that one. So, I need to make a little bit of an addendum here. These 5 on this cover, which I believe is a pseudo cover, perhaps used for the web novel version of Breakdown. These 5 were created by fans. If you do recall, all the way back, quite a few volumes ago, maybe in the first or second episode's volume, I did mention a little bit about how fans submitted magical girls were being considered for something. I have no idea it was for Breakdown, but these were the 5 that were chosen. Essentially, the submitters went ahead and created their design, their name, and any other settings that they needed, as well as their ability. the ability wasn't a requirement, I believe. And then Asari Endo chose, and the team behind the series chose, and then Asari Endo did go ahead and write them into the story to make them official. And I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool that we got such fun and unique and interesting characters from the fans, and that Asari Endo was one, not only willing to integrate them into their own world and own storytelling, but did it in such a natural way where I just didn't even process that until after I was done with the second half of Breakdown. So props to the five who did these five, and props to Asari Endo for making me like all of them. I'm sure the fans are happy. Maybe not so happy that they're not the same people as they were before, but frankly, if you're going to submit a magical girl to a series like this, they should be prepared to go through some hardship, right? But yeah, I think that's pretty neat. We'll move on, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.